if you're looking at the events of September 11th as just the World Trade Center and how the towers fell, or if you're just looking at the Pentagon and Shanksville um, regarding whether a plane had actually crashed there, you're making a grave mistake. These are not separate incidences. These are all linked incidences. These are all one terrorist incident. And so for people in the truth movement to cause this sectarian divide of us versus them within their own movement and force people to make a choice or a stand with somebody is pretty disingenuous. Now, I'm not going to call out names or um, give these people any type of attention any more than they already have. But this is a primary problem within the truth movement. And I was just talking to somebody who was on Facebook who has a site. And she's a nice girl, but she seems to be uh, almost coerced or forced to make a choice about whether or not to delve into certain issues like the Pentagon and Shankville, because you have these people that don't believe in hijackers or hijacked planes, um, almost acting like a cult, where they're forcing people um, to decide about whether you're for them or you're against us. Um, that's not how a truth movement should be conducted. You should be only concerned with one thing: the truth, evidence. If you're going to make a claim about, say, no plane crashing into the Pentagon, um, why don't you ask questions that would be against your position? Because that's how you know it would be right. And that's the reason why in my past two videos, I had my 16-year-old niece come into my room and I've asked her about certain conspiracies involving these issues of 9/11. And she came up with her own questions. I didn't badger her or anything. She just came to my room and I said, would you like to go on camera to address these issues? Because she's inquisitive, just like all kids are. But the problem here is that you, those who endorse these rabid conspiracies regarding no hijackers or no planes, just come right out and make these assertions without ever providing a reasonable explanation for them. You just believe it because you heard about it from somebody else. 9 out of 10 times when I ask these people for evidence of their claims, I get a 2 hour or 3 hour lecture on YouTube coming from like Christopher Bolin or Rebecca Roth or CIT team or Barbara Honegger. And all those people just basically make stuff up. They're not even very good at giving explanations for them. They just don't believe it. They just say, well, look, there's hardly any plane debris at the Pentagon or at Shanksville. What did you expect? These planes were fully loaded with kerosene, 18,000 pounds, going at speeds of upwards of 560 miles an hour, hitting solid surfaces. There isn't going to be much, but they did find the black boxes for Flight 93, as well as all the human remains of the passengers and crew. And for the Pentagon, they found the flight data recorder, the fuselage, and pieces of the turbofan, which was the engines themselves, inside the rings. And so the conspiracy movement will say, well, those airplane parts are not registered to 77, or they'll even go further and say, well, they were planted in broad daylight in front of thousands of investigators. And it was thousands. It was the largest investigation in Washington, D.C. history. There were hundreds of firefighters there from all towns. There were hundreds of first responders from urban search and rescue from Montgomery and Fairfax counties. There were literally hundreds and thousands of cops, firemen, National Guard all over the place conducting a search and rescue operation where they're walking over plane debris and people who were burned from jet fuel. So this division that we're seeing in the truth movement doesn't necessarily have to be, but unfortunately, these conspiracies have permeated the truth movement for 17 years. And so how do you deprogram from these conspiracy movements? Well, that's up to the individual, whether they're interested in believing something or knowing something. Because you can believe whatever you want. You could believe that a missile hit the Pentagon. Godzilla hit the Pentagon. A drone outfitted to look like a plane hit the Pentagon. And that the real hijacked planes went somewhere in some hangar, airplane hangar, and they were forced by these unnamed, unknown agents of the government or the military to make phone calls. You can believe whatever you want, but knowing something is a different animal. When you know something, you could show something. And most of these people are already disregarding the evidence that there are actually people who were there who saw the planes crash. And it's like I'm a broken record at this point, but I'm flabbergasted at the amount of people in the truth movement who pertain to these ridiculous infantile conspiracy theories that hurt the truth movement in total. It hurts actual researchers who are actually trying to get information and evidence to show that there were domestic and foreign agencies inside the United States that wanted this attack to happen. But you have to be responsible enough to conduct responsible research. That's the key here. If you're just going to say that there were no hijackers, no hijacked planes, who are you blaming 9/11 for? Israel? Well, who were the Israeli Mossad moving companies? Who were they? Why were they inside the United States, first of all? And secondly, who were they following? In Florida, in New Jersey, in New York. The hijackers. They didn't tell the FBI. They didn't tell the State Department. The Saudis out west, the Saudi GID, the General Intelligence Directorate. Who were they funding? Who were they assisting? Two hijackers, Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. But if they don't exist, there is no funding, which was coming from the bank account of Bandar bin Sultan, the U.S. Saudi ambassador and close friend to George W. Bush, George W. Bush Jr. So basically, you just absolved the CIA from monitoring the hijackers abroad, the NSA who were listening into the phone calls from the Yemen hub connected to the 9/11 attacks, the Saudis and the Israelis operatives inside the United States who were following the hijackers. You basically got rid of all these agencies. Have you thought that far? And if so, and you continue to purport these conspiracy theories, then I question your motives. And for all these years of you calling me a shill and say I'm working for the government, well, I don't absolve Israel, Saudi Arabia, the CIA, the NSA, the State Department from having foreknowledge or complicity in 9/11. With you promulgating these theories, you do. So I question your motives.